Hello and welcome. This is Daybreak on A News. I'm James Ezimoa. Let's see your headlines. The US and Iran exchange fresh strikes as fighting around the Strait of Hormuz intensifies. Oil prices remain elevated as renewed fighting around Hormuz fuels supply concerns. And France approves a landmark assisted dying bill after years of political and ethical debate. The United States and Iran have exchanged fresh military strikes, further escalating the conflict across the Gulf. The latest attacks come days after the collapse of a ceasefire and amid growing concerns over regional security and global supply energy.
The United States launched 2 waves of strikes against Iranian coastal defenses, missile sites and military infrastructure on Wednesday, saying the attacks were aimed at weakening Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Central Command said the operation targeted command centers, air defense systems, drone capabilities, and Revolutionary Guards facilities, including around Bandar Abbas and Greater Tunb Island. Speaking during a defense event in Pennsylvania, President Donald Trump said the campaign was achieving its objectives.
We're doing really well with Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran is not happy right now. Should have been done 47 years ago. Should have been done at least during the 47-year period. And it wasn't. Other presidents didn't do what was right. They should have done it a long time ago. It would have been much easier. And they want to settle so badly. They don't like what we're doing. And they do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish it off.
Iran responded by launching missiles and drones at U.S. military sites in Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had targeted American personnel and military infrastructure, while Iranian media reported explosions in several cities and the activation of air defenses around Tehran. Asked about President Trump's recent remarks and threats against Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian said the country would continue defending its territory.
The people who decided to divide our Iran into pieces, in the end, where are they standing now? We, in action, will defend every inch of our soil, and these disrespectful comments are worthy of them, not us.
The latest escalation follows Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend, disrupting one of the world's busiest energy routes. Despite the continuing hostilities, President Trump said Iran had allowed an American citizen detained since 2024 to leave the country, describing the move as a gesture of goodwill.
Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they have targeted several American military sites in the latest attacks. Iranian officials have warned there will be no compromise over the Strait of Hormuz. Turaj Shivalilu reports from Tehran.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards said it targeted U.S. military facilities at the Al-Azraq base in Jordan and pounded an American logistics center in Kuwait, as well as the United States 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, late on Tuesday and early Wednesday. According to the Sepah News website covering the forces' statements, the attacks were a continuation of Iran's reprisal operations against the U.S. military campaign on Iran. The attacks follow Washington's threats of withdrawing from the ceasefire deal with Tehran that was signed in June. Meantime, President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Iran will defend every inch of its territory after U.S. President Donald Trump retweeted his earlier post suggesting occupation of the Iranian islands in the Persian Gulf. The state-owned IRNA news agency quoted him as saying that Trump's renewed threats on bombing Iran's energy infrastructure, as well as his remarks against the Iranian nation, reflect the U.S. chief executive's hatred of Iranians. Also, Army spokesman Brigadier General Mohammad Akraminia said that the Iranian armed forces would not make the slightest compromise over the Strait of Hormuz. The general stressed that the only way for the United States to reopen the strategic waterway is to respect the rights of the Iranian nation and to comply with the terms of the Iran-US Memorandum of Understanding to end the war. In New York, Iran's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations rejected claims made by the American ambassador Tammy Bruce that Tehran is supporting the Houthis in Yemen. Calling the accusations baseless, Amir Saeed Iravani said that America is an aggressor, not a victim. In a letter to the UN Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, the Iranian diplomat added that the US representative at the meeting on the situation in the Middle East abused the platform of the Security Council to spread false information and make a series of baseless and politically motivated claims against Iran. In another related development, Iran's foreign ministry slammed UK labeling of the Revolutionary Guards as a security threat, describing the designation an unjustified and irresponsible measure. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for News.
Now, global oil prices continue to climb as concerns over supply persists, with investors watching developments between Iran and the United States closely. Here's more.
Oil prices moved higher for a fourth straight session after the latest American attacks on Iranian military targets increased worries about a broader Middle East confrontation. Brent crude was up around 0.4% at just over $85 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate futures added about 0.5% to trade above $80. Investors are watching the Strait of Hormuz closely. The waterway is one of the world's most important energy routes, and any disruption there could affect supplies to global markets. The recent military action has added to concerns that shipments from the Gulf could be delayed or reduced, pushing prices higher this week. Analysts at Goldman Sachs say crude could climb above $110 a barrel later this year if exports remain restricted. But they also say prices could drop sharply if the situation calms down and production returns more quickly than expected.
Now, the conflict between Washington and Tehran has entered another critical stage, with renewed military action, threats against energy targets, and growing fears over global energy security. Joining us now to discuss this is James Dorsey, political analyst, joining us from Singapore. Good to have you, sir. Now, what political and military objectives does Washington hope to achieve by targeting Iran's energy infrastructure?
We're seeing a red line through this whole conflict, starting with the February 28 U.S.-Israeli assault on Iran and leading up till today. And that is the belief on the part of U.S. President Donald Trump that he can bomb Iran into submission. And by the same token, Iran believes that its resistance is capable of forcing Trump to concede. So what you have essentially is a battle of wills, a battle of who will blink first and who can sustain the greatest pain.
So does threatening Iran's energy sector act as a calculated deterrent, or does it virtually guarantee regional escalation?
It guarantees escalation, in my mind. What you would see in response by the Iranians is attacks on energy infrastructure, which we've already seen in the earlier phase of the war, of energy infrastructure in the Gulf states. You look at Ras Laffan, Qatar's main liquefied natural gas processing plant, which was severely damaged, or the Ras Tanura, the oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. So I think that the other danger in all of this is that, as Trump has said, that he would expand the attacks on infrastructure not only to energy, but also, for example, to electricity grids and to bridges, and potentially to water installations. And that again would provoke an Iranian response with attacks on similar installations in the Gulf countries.
Now, so if its economic lifelines are targeted, what realistic options, both militarily or diplomatically does Tehran have left?
Tehran basically is in the position in which all it has to do is impede shipping to deter shipping. In that sense, it's much easier for Iran to pursue its objectives than it is for the United States. For the United States to really take control of the Strait of Hormuz would presumably involve some form of troops on the ground, not something that Trump so far has wanted to do.
So at what point do maritime insurance hikes and risk assessments enforce a de facto blockade, regardless of naval presence?
Well, as a matter of fact, you have a blockade. You have the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports, and you have the the Iranian attacks on shipping, which, for all practical matters, reduces shippings through the Strait of Hormuz significantly. And that can go on for some time, again, at serious cost, both serious cost to Iran, but also at serious cost to global international energy markets, as well as the Gulf states.
So how viable is the Gulf states' balancing act of securing their own energy exports while remaining neutral?
It's a difficult balancing act. And the question for the Gulf states is whether they should, and if so, when and how, respond to the Gulf attacks on their own or in coordination with the United States. That's a question that's the Gulf states will have to answer. Individual Gulf states have done that, and we've seen different responses by the Gulf states to the Iranian attacks. But again, this is something that can go on for a significant period of time. Although I think that what we will see in the coming days is a greater escalation on the part of the United States, and in response, the Iranians.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are the legal and diplomatic consequences under international law if civilian energy infrastructure is intentionally targeted?
It's violations of international law by definition. But then again, this whole conflict is based on violations of international law. The grounds for the Israeli-US attack on February 28 were flimsy at best. Iran's claims that it controls and has the right to control not only its own territorial waters, but also those of Oman, the other Strait of Hormuz littoral state, is a violation of international law.
Mm-hmm. Now, if miscalculation is the primary risk, what specific triggers or developments over the coming days most worry military planners?
I don't know if miscalculation is the primary risk. I think the primary risk is escalation. In other words, the United States, to achieve its goals as enunciated by Trump, would demand an escalation. And we've seen escalation already in the pattern of the U.S. bombings, as well as in the pattern of the Iranian response, including for the first time attacking both Qatar and Jordan and Oman since the ceasefire was declared in April. So escalation at this point is the name of the game rather than miscalculation.
Now, speaking about escalation, if Tehran retaliates against Gulf energy facilities or commercial shipping, how quickly could this become a wider regional war?
It depends on how the Gulf states respond. That could be a tipping point for the Gulf states. That remains to be seen. It also depends on how the United States responds to Iranian attacks on Gulf energy infrastructure. It certainly would be a significant escalation and potentially a tipping point.
So that being said, which countries are best positioned to mediate now and do any meaningful leverage over both Washington and Tehran? I know that Pakistan already have started some groundwork, but aside Pakistan, which other countries could step in right now?
Well, the Pakistanis have been the main negotiators, although More recently, the Qataris have also played an important role. Oman plays a role in terms of its discussions with Iran over a future management structure for the Strait of Hormuz. At the end of the day, mediation is only going to work when both sides are truly interested in reviving negotiations. Now, having said that, neither the United States nor Iran wants a return to an all-out war, but they want negotiations and an agreement on their terms, which means that by definition, they're willing to run the risk of a return to an all-out war.
Now, what would be the clearest early signs that both sides are moving toward de-escalation rather than preparing for another round of strikes?
A rollback of military activity, which we're not seeing. We're seeing, on the contrary, we're seeing the opposite. You've seen the U.S. bombings over the last week escalate. You've seen the Iranian response in terms of attacks on Gulf states and Jordan escalate. And you now have the United States, Trump basically saying, next week we're going to escalate again. We're going to attack energy infrastructure, bridges, and other infrastructure. So at this point, we're on an escalation path.
Now, what does success realistically look like for both sides? And does a credible diplomatic off-ramp still exist?
Increasingly, a diplomatic off-ramp is becoming very difficult because neither side at this point can concede while at the same time claiming that they have defeated the other party, which is what both parties want to claim, or that they have or declare victory. Trump is in a very difficult position. He needs to be able to show that his withdrawal from the 2015 international agreement that curbed Iran's nuclear program and his launching of the war were justified and that the results prove that. At this point, that's going to be very difficult for Trump. By the same token, as a matter of principle, survival for the Islamic Republic is already a success. Its ability to disrupt shipping in the Strait of Hormuz is a success. And of course, we don't know whether or not this is going to escalate further by involving not only the Strait of Hormuz, but also the Houthis in Yemen and Bab al-Mandab, the waterway that connects the Suez Canal and the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean.
That was James M. Dorsey, political analyst, joining us from Singapore. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, after a short break, we'll return with the rest of the global stories. Stay with us. Welcome back to Way News. Now, Ukraine and the European Union have officially signed a landmark defense partnership to launch joint military production. At a high-profile ceremony in Kyiv, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen sealed the new drone deal, while President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the pact coincides with Ukraine nearing unprecedented capabilities to produce Patriot interceptor missiles.
I'm delighted to launch, together with you, Volodymyr, a new EU-Ukraine defense industrial partnership. What we are signing today is our very own drone deal. So the point I'm making is that we need to combine our strength. Together we can work on joint production, on making all of the components of the system work.
For the first time, Ukraine is approaching the capability to produce missiles for Patriot and could become the third country in history to have this agreement and this privilege. And for the first time, Ukraine is building its own ballistics and deep strikes. And these are not just developments, but a real force that is already operating, which covers distances previously unreachable, 2,884 kilometers.
мільйонів дронів.
Now, Russia says the chief engineer at the Russian-controlled Zaporizhia nuclear power plant was killed when a Ukrainian drone struck a service vehicle near the site on Wednesday. The plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility, has repeatedly been at the center of accusations by both sides over attacks threatening nuclear safety. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, condemned the incident as an unacceptable attack that seriously endangers nuclear safety without assigning responsibility. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials said Russian strikes on the city of Zaporizhia killed 3 people, injured 15, as fighting continued across the region. Now, Ukraine and the European Union have signed a drone deal aiming to combine Kyiv's expertise with European Union industrial capacity to establish joint projects and scale up production. That's according to the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who was in Kyiv to mark the country's statehood day. William Denslow filed this report from Brussels.
In recent days, Ukrainian senior officials have said that the battle for dominance over the skies of Ukraine will determine the trajectory in its war with Russia. To that end, they believe they've received a significant boost on Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, and several other European leaders' visit to Ukraine, where a deal was announced, a drone deal worth over $1 billion. Now, the point of this drone deal that comes as part of this huge pot of over $100 billion in a EU loan for Ukraine is really better integration to combine Europe's industrial capacity with Ukraine's drone knowledge and know-how. This comes as part of a broader deal that was also penned, a defence industrial partnership. Really, that theme again of integration, Ursula von der Leyen saying that this is about shared industrial strength for common security. This also comes several days after members of the Coalition of the Willing agreed to facilitate an anti-ballistic missile program here in Europe to counter the threat of Russian strikes, not just to protect the skies over Ukraine, but for the rest of Europe as well. But here on the visit to Ukraine for Ursula von der Leyen and several of those European leaders, the topic wasn't just on bolstering and deepening these military ties. Also on the agenda was Ukraine's accession to the European Union, what steps need to be taken to speed up that process of Kyiv eventually joining the bloc. Also on the agenda, planning for winter, with officials very much expecting that again, when the temperatures begin to drop, Russia will continue their policy of targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This was an opportunity for planning to determine what exactly Ukraine needs from the European Union to help mitigate that scenario. William Denslow, Frey News, Brussels.
Now, Keir Starmer delivered an emotional final day session of the Prime Minister's questions and chaired his last cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Britain is now poised for Andy Burnham to take over as Prime Minister. A-News' correspondent Ollie Barrett has more.
For the Cabinet and for the House of Commons, these were really the big goodbyes. Keir Starmer hasn't actually left the role of Labour leader or Prime Minister yet, but it's his final cabinet meeting, and during that cabinet meeting he was presented with a carriage clock by his cabinet ministers as a goodbye present. We're told it was an emotional meeting, although Keir Starmer will know that some of those around his cabinet table played a role in his downfall, so perhaps mixed emotions there. Also emotional during Prime Minister's questions, particularly when Keir Starmer was talking about some of those people that he feels his government have helped since he has been Prime Minister. He also got very emotional talking about his support for Ukraine and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, particularly after Volodymyr Zelensky was, in Keir Starmer's words, attacked in the White House and then was welcomed to Britain the following day to a rather different reception. Kemi Badenoch expressed her admiration for the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, talking in quite glowing terms about Keir Starmer during their final back and forth across the dispatch box in PMQs. As I say, he's not yet out of a job, but that will come very soon. On Friday, we expect the announcement that Andy Burnham, the MP for Makerfield and former Greater Manchester Mayor, will be announced as the new Labour leader. And then on Monday, Andy Burnham will take over as Prime Minister. There were various mentions in PMQs of what some opposition politicians see as a lack of scrutiny for Andy Burnham because Parliament will be on recess when he becomes Prime Minister. And also some critics say Andy Burnham hasn't yet set out a clear policy agenda and therefore has a lack of mandate when he takes over the role. Keir Starmer, during Prime Minister's questions, insisting that he would give his wholehearted support to his successor, would only give him advice in private if it was asked for, and wouldn't be setting out that advice to his successor in public. As I say, an emotional day for Keir Starmer ahead of leaving the job. Keir Starmer described this at the end of PMQs as the end of his political journey. Andy Burnham, when he becomes Prime Minister, knows that he faces a long and difficult to-do list of challenges that the UK currently faces. Ollie Barrett in London for A News.
Now, Toronto's air quality ranked the worst among major cities globally after smoke from wildfires burning across Canada has reached the area, triggering health warnings. Authorities call for residents to limit outdoor activities.
Wildfire smoke from northwestern Ontario has blanketed Toronto, turning the sky hazy and pushing air pollution to hazardous levels. Environment Canada recorded an air quality health index reading above 10 on Wednesday, its highest risk category, and warned residents to reduce time outdoors.
Oh, you can definitely smell it, absolutely. As soon as I woke up in the morning, I went outside on my terrace and you could definitely smell the smoke in the air, and it's very hazy out, so absolutely it's noticeable.
The smoke arrived as Toronto remained under a heat warning, with temperatures reaching around 33 degrees Celsius and feeling closer to 39 with humidity. People with respiratory conditions, along with children and older residents, are considered particularly vulnerable to fine particles in wildfire smoke.
It's creating more and more concern because we used to have such situation 2 years ago and now, and it looks like it's an ongoing problem. I don't know what's happening somewhere because not directly in Toronto, it's happening somewhere outside of area.
More than 800 active wildfires were burning across Canada, including over 100 considered out of control. Around 1.9 million hectares have burned so far this year, with most fires concentrated in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. Forecasters said poor air quality in Toronto could continue into Thursday night.
Now, China is making final preparations for one of the world's largest artificial intelligence events. The 2026 World AI Conference and high-level meeting on global AI governance opened in Shanghai on Friday. Abu Hayat Jafarova reports from Beijing.
Shanghai is preparing for a massive annual event in the field of artificial intelligence. This year's World AI Conference is set to be on a record scale in terms of exhibition space, showcasing new AI technologies from China and around the world. More than 1,100 companies are set to showcase over 3,000 AI products and technologies, and more than 300 global premieres are expected. As Friday's opening approached, exhibition halls are being prepared, robots tested, and interactive displays installed across the event's 4 venues. More than 140 forums are planned on AI innovation and governance, one of the defining issues in artificial intelligence today. This will be the 8th year Shanghai has hosted this event. The city has built a complete ecosystem for AI development, making it an ideal setting. Abu Hayat Jafarova, A News, Beijing, China.
Now let's talk to Nargiz Mamadova, expert in international relations at Caspia Center in Baku, Azerbaijan. Good to have you, ma'am.
Hello, good to be here.
Thank you. Now, why has this event become one of the world's most important AI gatherings?
Well, first of all, let's start with the topic because AI topic is an emerging and I think one of the favorite topic in also in governmental sector. And I think that, you know, the first thing that we need to focus is that how we use AI for the benefit and for the profit of rich people, because government, while using AI, use all the resources for creating better products, better models of AI. And I think that this conference in Shanghai, which will start tomorrow, will be gathering not only the government or governmental structures, bodies and institutes. I think that it will be gathering government and business, because business is also very involved in creating AI models for the future. And actually for businesses, it's very profitable. They can create an AI product or they can sell their product or sell the services that this product kind of making.
All right, so speaking about selling products, has AI become a measure of national influence, not just innovation?
Well, for me, very interesting question, because it's a very huge paradox and debate over like whenever AI is tool for influence. But I can say that there is a competition on AI race in the world between US and China, for example, and for the resources that AI need to be implemented. For example, everybody can ask why suddenly Trump started its, let's say, treasure for the rare earth materials. The answer is very simple, because the rare earth materials is commonly used in creating AI models and AI chips, like technically. And while China has 90% over the production of rare earth materials, in this case, like USA is not on the first ground, not on the first place. So that's why there is a competition over the resources and over the topic who will be the AI dominant in the world.
Now, you mentioned the United States and China leading the AI world. Is the gap widening or narrowing?
Sorry, what? Is
the gap in the AI world between the US and China and the rest of the pack, is it widening or is it narrowing?
Well, I would say that, we should look into AI, not something that is general for each country. No, each AI-driven country or each government that widely use AI, some countries are using AI in governmental structure for 99%, for over 90%, for example, Estonia. For example, Kazakhstan on their banking system using like more than 90% AI. Of course, it raises question like, is AI like similar and identical in each country that we can kind of compare, find gaps and etc. No, that's the paradox that, for example, let's start with Central Asia, okay? The Central Asia doing really massive work on development, the AI, not only in the government, but on different spheres of life, even in education. So, for example, Kazakhstan has even the Minister of Artificial Intelligence called Alem, while Uzbekistan trying to put more and more investment of AI from other countries like US and China, while they're using the standards of China. The standardization of AI is a very huge debate over, I think, 5 years, because even when you want to create a common space of AI, each country has its own right to use like its own standards or the standards of other countries, and it's kind of, when 2 or 3 countries can gather together and work together on AI, there can be a problem because each country uses other standardizations of AI, and it also raises a questions of ethics of AI.
Now let's bring it home. Where does Azerbaijan fit in this fast-changing AI landscape?
Well, I think that now we're on a perfect timelining of gathering of AI, because I think that AI is the future and AI is not an alternative. Okay, AI is the future. It can be the main topic of, let's say, governmental transformation in future. And somehow in Azerbaijan, in different spheres, for example, in banking system, and somehow there is lots of proposals about education, how AI can be used. And in other spheres, Azerbaijan is using AI. The main thing that the Azerbaijan wanted and its aim to be an AI hub, like as Azerbaijan is a hub in the transport and transport logistics, the same Azerbaijan wants to be a hub between Central Asia, South Caucasus, and even Europe. And for example, that's why we need a stable internet that will go from Europe to Central Asian countries toward China without any, let's say, limitation. So that's why right now Azerbaijan is, let's say, doing a project under the Caspian Sea for the building fiber optic cable under the Caspian Sea between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. The same will be on the like Black Sea, under the Black Sea. I mean the cable that will go from Azerbaijan, and it will wider. I will say it will have 2 branches, one to Georgia, via Georgia to Turkey, via Turkey to European countries. And recently we got news that Azerbaijan will share its internet with Armenia too. So I think that, and also in Azerbaijan there's a plan for building supercomputer for delivering all the data, because data is huge, data will be delivering. And I think that it's like, in this case, we can use all the benefits of AI.
Now, you spoke about standardization of AI earlier. Is AI governance keeping pace with rapid technological advances?
Well, I think partially yes. I think that even some governments now are eager more to change rapidly to AI because it saves time. Like, very simple. But still, the question here is that the standardization takes time. Each government has its own ethics of AI, because AI simply, what is doing AI is using special algorithms. Like, AI is not just ChatGPT, Gemini, and etc. No, AI is more than that. So AI is creating complex algorithms like in chess, but the main goal is to be even more perfect, if I can say this, than chess game. So it's creating complex algorithms to delivering more accurate data to customer. Maybe this customer can be government, his customer can be a simple person, even it can be a politician, even it can be someone sitting in NATO or Pentagon, okay? So the question here, how ethical we can use AI, is that it will not damage the government, it will not damage the people, it will not damage the businesses, and give me clear data without any hesitation, without any humiliation, and without any biased information, let's say. So I think that this topic is very urgent right now, and I think that in this case, even some points of international basic, like international law, should also be reconsidered.
That was Nargiz Mamadova, expert in international relations at the Caspian Center, joining us from Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Now, the United States will issue a new $1 coin featuring President Donald Trump as part of celebrations marking the country's 250th anniversary. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the move, saying the U.S. Mint will begin production. The coin will display Trump's portrait alongside the words "Liberty, in God we trust," and 1776 to 2026, with the presidential bald eagle on the reverse. Now, Keiko Fujimori has been formally confirmed as Peru's president-elect after receiving her official credentials at a ceremony in Lima. She'll become the first woman elected by popular vote to lead the country. Fujimori said the end of the election process marked the beginning of a new stage focused on progress, peace, and national reconciliation. Her two vice presidents also received their credentials as supporters gathered outside the National Theatre with flags and balloons. Fujimori is due to be sworn in on the 28th of July, Peru's Independence Day. Now, older teenagers in the United Kingdom could soon face overnight social media curfews under new government proposals. Ministers say the measures would make social media safer for young people, but critics argue they don't go far enough. Zainab Faizada reports.
16 and 17-year-olds in the UK could soon face overnight social media curfews under new government proposals. If approved by Parliament, apps including Instagram, TikTok and YouTube would be unavailable by default between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. Also, teenagers will still be able to switch the restrictions off through their account settings. The government also wants platforms to disable features such as autoplay and infinite scrolling by default, saying the changes will help teenagers sleep better, concentrate at school, and spend more time with family and friends. Technology Secretary Liz Kendall says the aim is to ensure young people can benefit from technology while being better protected from its harmful effects. The proposals follow last month's announcement of a full social media ban for under-16s, which is expected to come into force next spring. The government says the plans are backed by a months-long trial involving 300 teenagers across the UK. It found that overnight curfews produced the biggest improvements in sleep, encouraged more family interaction, and were the easiest option for parents to manage. But the proposals have drawn criticism from both politicians and child safety experts. However, the Conservatives say teenagers can simply turn the curfew off, making it ineffective, while the Molly Rose Foundation argues that government still lacks a comprehensive strategy to protect children online. Meanwhile, digital rights experts warn that blocking social media overnight could prevent vulnerable young people from reaching trusted friends or support services when they need help most. The government is also proposing new safeguards for artificial intelligence chatbots, including mandatory reminders encouraging under-18s to take regular breaks while using them. Zainab Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Now, France's parliament has approved landmark legislation creating a legal right to assisted dying for adults with incurable illnesses under strict conditions. The bill passed by the National Assembly by 291 votes to 241 will now allow eligible patients to self-administer a lethal substance or receive medical assistance if they are physically unable to do so. President Emmanuel Macron welcomed the outcome after months of ethical and political debate, while opponents gathered outside Parliament to protest the measure. Now to a quick break. When we return, I'll discuss the key regional headlines and be joined by a guest. Stay with us. All right, with football, with World Cup football fever gripping fans at the moment, an international grassroots football academy is making its first appearance in Baku. Could we be seeing some of these players who were released from Premier League academies in Azerbaijan's football clubs next season? And what could this mean for popularity of football here? Kate Wilson has more.
When Belal Mustafzadeh scored that winning goal for Karabakh at the UEFA Champions League game against Frankfurt, we asked ourselves, what could the legacy of this record-breaking run for Karabakh mean for Azerbaijani football? Well, the answer could well be behind me now. Rising Stars Football Academy was founded in the UK and supports players from not only the UK but South America and Europe in finding contracts at international clubs. That could be in Europe, it could be in the UAE, and it could well be in Azerbaijan. Is today they're making their showcase debut here in Baku, where they potentially could see players from the academy getting signed at Premier League football clubs here in Azerbaijan. Now, we all know football is getting bigger in Azerbaijan, and we're seeing more international players be signed for the teams here, and this could well become part of that. And we're asking ourselves, what could this mean for Azerbaijani football? Within the region, we're seeing players such as Abdulkadir Kusanov from Uzbekistan make his debut at Manchester City and the World Cup, and Azerbaijan could well be next. They're sporting powerhouses in other sports such as contact sport, and football may well be the next sport. Now, I've been speaking to the organisers from Rising Stars Football Academy about what they believe the future could hold for not only these players behind me, but for football in Azerbaijan.
Rising Stars was created in 2022 as a platform to give young, talented football players that have been released from professional football academies and players with the passion to become professional football players. We're here to create new opportunities for them, take them on trial at professional clubs and so on.
Being from Azerbaijan myself, I was born in Baku, but obviously I've been in the UK for 25 years now. I am definitely, most certainly can say, we will see Azerbaijani national players playing in the top leagues in Europe. I've realised that there's quality that is needed in this country and the quality which we have. So currently we've got a few players who are out on trial in the Azerbaijani Premier League and in the Azerbaijani First League as well, which is the equivalent to the Championship in the UK. Yeah, that's what we do basically. That's our main aim. Our main aim is to come and increase the quality of players in the Azerbaijani Football League.
Great country with great culture and very nice people. They're very welcoming. So far our stay has been great and it's been very welcoming. And I'm very hopeful that, yeah, something comes out of this.
Now, for two football fans, watching every World Cup match has become a full-time job. Kevin Akoto and Austin Franklin were chosen by US broadcaster Fox 1 to be chief World Cup watchers. They are each earning $50,000 to follow every game from a glass viewing cube in New York's Times Square. They also produce social media content and meet fans throughout the tournament.
You know what? It's just such a blast, this job, that you know, my dad cleans up oil spills for a living, so I'm always like, you know, nothing is really too demanding in comparison. Like I'm getting paid to have like the summer of a lifetime, where I sit here with my friend Kevin and watch all of these matches, and you know, get to go outside and interact with fans. So, you know. Like it's really genuinely a blast and has been an awesome experience.
Now, new scanning technology is helping researchers preserve fragile cultural artifacts and explore historic sites in unprecedented detail without touching the originals.
From an underground burial chamber in Naples to a ceiling 8 meters above visitors in Oxford,
3D scanning is opening up ancient treasures that are difficult to reach, study, or even see in detail. The technology captures far more than an object's appearance. It records tiny changes in its surface, texture, color, shape, and scale, creating detailed digital models for researchers. The Factum Foundation has spent 25 years developing non-contact systems to document fragile artifacts and historic sites without putting the originals at risk.
So people think of digitization as taking a photo. Actually, we record the surface of objects. We use multispectral photography. We build different scanning systems that might be photometric stereo or photogrammetry or laser-based. And we've been doing it for 25 years, totally focused on recording different cultural artifacts so that people can study them properly.
Once recorded, the objects can be explored on screen from different angles, enlarged to reveal fine details and viewed under adjustable lighting. Recent projects include the Ipogeo dei Cristallini, a Hellenistic underground burial site in Naples, and the decorated ceiling of Oxford University's Divinity School. Both are difficult to examine closely. The Oxford ceiling is 8 meters above visitors, while access to the burial chamber is limited. The digital records allow scholars to study such sites remotely and help conservation teams monitor deterioration and plan restoration work. The same data can also be used to create physical facsimiles that closely reproduce an original object's dimensions, color, and surface. Factum used this process to reconstruct Michelangelo's young St. John the Baptist, which was shattered during the Spanish Civil War. 10 surviving fragments were digitally assembled, while historical photographs helped specialists recreate the missing sections. The technology cannot replace original artifacts, but it can preserve a detailed record of them, reduce pressure on vulnerable sites, and make cultural heritage more accessible for future study and display.
Now, Argentina have reached the 2026 FIFA World Cup final after a dramatic 2-1 comeback victory over England in Atlanta. Anthony Gordon gave England the lead before Lionel Messi set up Enzo Fernandez's equalizer in the 85th minute, and Lautaro Martinez headed home the winner in stoppage time. The defending champions will now face European champions Spain in Sunday's World Cup final at the New Jersey Stadium. A victory would make them the first team since Brazil in 1962 to successfully defend the trophy. All right, that's it for us this morning. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.